Alright, so for today's class, we are going to be going over complements and sentence patterns. Now, as a part of that, we'll be talking about the three different types of verbs, and we'll also be talking about direct objects and indirect objects, and there's going to be quite a bit of grammar here. So it's really critical that we focus, and we pay attention, and we get these notes down to ensure that we're learning everything we need to for our upcoming quizzes. The first thing I want you to do is make sure that you're turned in your interactive notebook to your notes that looks like this. So it's on page 5 of your grammar, writing, and vocabulary section. And as you're going through with the presentation and watching it, you want to make sure you're completing these notes as we go through each slide. Okay, and I'll make sure that I direct you, but you need to make sure that you're also paying attention to what you need to have written down. So the first thing we're going to be looking for is the 4 sentence patterns and the 4 complements. Now this may be something completely new to you. This may be something that you learned a little bit in 6th grade, but we're going to do a nice refresher and we're going to make sure that you know the different types. Now it's critical to know our different sentence patterns. That way we have a good understanding if we're making correct sentences or not, and if we're adding enough detail. Okay, so if we take a look, we do have 4 main types of sentence patterns. Now I know it kind of looks like a whole lot of gibberish here, but I ensure that we will be going through and we'll make quite a bit of understanding on each of these sentence pattern types. So the first type that we have is the subject, action, verb, and then direct object pattern. So with this, you're going to have a subject at the beginning. That subject will be doing some sort of action verb, and then it's going to be followed with a direct object. And we'll show a couple examples of these as we go on. So in your notes, you want to make sure you're completing the first section and getting these copied down. So the second one is going to be subject plus action verb plus indirect object plus direct object. Now this one's a little bit different from the first one because you have the addition of the indirect object. Now the indirect object is going to be slightly different than the direct object in that it's always going to come before it, and it's always going to typically be whatever that is receiving the action verb. Okay, so we'll go through these as well in our next slide. But to continue on with our 4 types, we also have the subject plus linking verb plus predicate adjective. And we'll go back and we'll kind of do a review on our predicates and our subjects because I know they may sound familiar, but I want to make sure we have a good understanding of what each of those means and that we don't get hung up on the word or the vocabulary necessarily. Okay? And then the final sentence pattern is going to be subject plus linking verb plus the predicate noun. So if you need to go ahead and pause, go ahead and do so now to get these copied down. Now, we need to wait. So what is the subject and the predicate? It sounds familiar, but maybe you just don't remember. Now your subject is going to be what the sentence is about. So it usually performs the action of the verb and it acts as a noun, okay? So it's going to be what the sentence is about, the subject. Now for the predicate, this is going to be what the subject does or what's happening to the subject. So that's going to be a verb, okay? Your subject is a noun, your predicate is typically a verb. So let's keep that in mind as we keep moving. Now we have something called compliments, and these are not compliments that you would give to your friend on their latest outfit or the latest LeBrons. These compliments have a lot to do with grammar, and they are quite critical. They're basically going to be used for a word or words that need to complete the meaning of an expression. So they're going to help fill in information about our verb. Most phrases and clauses are going to include a complement of some kind. If you can't remove it from your sentence, then it's most likely going to be a complement, so keep that in mind. You have 4 types of complements in sentences. You have direct object, which is DO. You have indirect object, which we abbreviated for IO. We have the predicate noun, PN, and then the predicate adjective, PA. So in your notes, in the second section, you need to get these 4 complements written down. I would also include the abbreviation in addition to both of the words that you see. Okay, so if you need to pause at this time to get those notes copied down, please do so. Now we have a variety of verbs here. We have action verbs and linking verbs and helping verbs, and we're going to go through each of them. But the first one we're going to talk about is going to be the action verb. Okay? Now an action verb is a verb that expresses physical or mental action. So these are the verbs that you can see and you can do. Okay? So it's going to be examples such as singing, running, hopping, seeing, saw, thinking, thought. So don't focus so much on the ing or the tense of it. You just want to think, is it something that can be done? Okay? Is it an action? Now the action verb is going to tell us what the subject is doing, either physically or mentally. So it may not necessarily be running or dancing or skipping. Maybe it's just thinking or dreaming. Okay? So it could be mentally as well. If you take a look at our example down below, our sentence says, Susie dreams of donuts. Now, as we get going here with our sentence types, it's critical that you identify any prepositional phrases, and what I'd like for you to do is cross them out, okay? And the way I'll cross mine out is by highlighting them a different color. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight this guy, red, or maybe I'll do black. How about that? And that'll tell me that that is out of the picture, okay? So of donuts, I know that of is a preposition, donuts is a noun, therefore it's a prepositional phrase. Okay, so now I can focus on the rest of the sentence. Now, Susie dreams. So who is the subject in this? It's going to be Susie. And what is our subject doing? Dreaming. So that's going to be our action verb. That's something that's going to be mental or physical, and it's going to show action. Now let's go ahead and do some practice ones. And on your notes, you want to follow along. So we have the first one. It says, King Kong stomps through the streets of New York. So just like in the last example, I want you to go ahead and identify any prepositional phrases that you see. Now I'm noticing that I have a couple in this first one. So I know that the word through is a preposition. I need to follow it all the way to the object of the preposition or the noun, and that's going to be streets. So I'm going to change the color and get rid of it, and then I'm going to keep going, okay? I also know that of is a preposition, and I know that New York is going to be a noun or the object of the preposition, so I'm also going to highlight that. That leaves me with King Kong stomps. So when I'm looking at this, I can kind of see what my subject would be. So I'm going to put S for subject, and I'm also going to put an AV for my action verb. Now, who is going to be the main person in this story, or who is the action happening to? That's going to be King Kong. And then what is King Kong doing? He's stomping, so that's going to be my action. Okay? So what I want you to do in your notes is I want you to continue through. Okay? I want you to do 2, 3, and 4 on your own. When you're doing these on your own, I want you to identify any prepositional phrases. Remember, those are the ones that we've been just testing on, and those are the ones we should have memorized. You want to go ahead and cross out any prepositional phrases. Okay, so you can just take your pencil and just cross them out when, as you see them. And then once you do that, I want you to label the subject in the sentence, and I also want you to label any action verbs that you see. Okay? So go ahead and pause the video and do that now. Okay, so once you've done that, I want you to go ahead and take a look at your next set of notes. We will be going over these tomorrow in class, so don't worry if you're unsure of if it's the right answer or not. We will be doing these all together as a class. I want to see how you did individually first. So after our action verbs, we also have other complements, remember? So we had things such as direct objects and indirect objects. So we're going to go ahead and do a direct object first, but we need to figure out what is a direct object. Now a direct object is a noun or a pronoun that follows the action of a verb in a sentence. Okay, so it's going to answer the questions of what or whom about the verb. Now I have an example below. It says, I watched the movie. Now who is doing the verb? That would be I, so that's my subject. What am I doing? We're watching, so that's going to be my action verb. And then what am I watching? That will be my direct object, movie. Okay? So let's take a look at our next practice questions. So now this is going to follow the sentence pattern of subject plus action verb plus direct object. Okay, so this is going to be the sentence pattern we're focusing on. This is our first one. So if we take a look here, it says, movie producers often borrow real homes to film. Now, as I'm looking at this sentence, I notice that there's something that's going to stand out to me here. I know that I see a preposition, to, but I need to be very careful because I know that this preposition could either be an infinitive or a prepositional phrase. So I need to really look at the word that's following my preposition to understand what sort of phrase this is. Now looking at it, the word following it is film, so to film. And I know that this is going to be acting as a verb, not a noun. So since this is a verb, this is an infinitive, and I want to cross it out. Because I don't want to worry about any prepositions, and I don't want to worry about any infinitives. So I'm going to cross it out and highlight it black. Now this is what I have left. Movie producers often borrow real homes. Now I need to figure out what the subject is in this sentence. So looking at it here, who is this sentence about? The sentence is about producers, so that's my subject. Let me go ahead and slide that over my subject. So producers is my subject. Now keep in mind, movie would not be a part of it because this is acting as an adjective. It's describing my noun, it's describing my subject. What kind of producers? These are movie producers, so that's an adjective. My subject is just producers here, okay? Now continuing here, I need to figure out what my action verb is. So what is my verb in this sentence? In this sentence, my verb is going to be borrow. Now often is also going to act here as a helping verb. Now whenever I see those helping verbs, they just stay together as one verb phrase. So I'm going to put AV over both of them. I know that this is a helping verb, I know this is an action verb, but together they still create one verb phrase. So I'm just going to put AV over both. Now, what is going to be borrowed? Okay, that's going to be homes. Okay, so subject, producers, my action is borrow, and what is being borrowed? Homes. Okay, remember real is going to act as an adjective describing my noun. So be aware of that. What I want you to do now is go ahead and pause, and I'd like for you to continue answering 6 and 7 on your own. Remember to cross out any infinitives or prepositional phrases. That way you can really narrow down what you're working with in the sentence. Okay? You want to label your subject, your action verb, and your direct object within the sentence. Okay? So you're identifying this sentence pattern. Go ahead and pause and do that now. Okay, once you've went ahead and answered 5, 6, and 7 for the direct object section, I want you to go ahead and take a look at the indirect objects. Okay, so what is an indirect object? Now, the indirect object always comes between the verb and the direct object. Once you identify the direct object, you want to ask yourself for whom or to whom received the action or the verb. Okay? So if you look at my example here, my sentence says, she gave me a gift. So who is the sentence about? She is the one performing our verb, so that's our subject. What is our verb? Our verb is going to be gave, and that's an action. And then you need to ask yourself, what's my direct object here? Okay, what is being given in the sentence? Now I can look over and see that the gift is being given. So I need to figure out where my indirect object is. I know my indirect object comes before the direct object, so I know that it's going to be me. Okay, this is going to be whom to answer the question. So who is going to be receiving the gift? Me. So that is going to be your indirect object. Okay, let's do a couple practice ones together. Now if we look at this here, we're following a different pattern now. This pattern is